Es buggt aber.
But what the hell, boy?
Scheiße.
Hello everyone, I'm Rasmus and I'm working on a Greek mythology based multiplayer fighting game in Unity. Think of the hero combat system in Star Wars Battlefront 2, but with Greek gods instead of Star Wars characters, and magic and the power of gods instead of the Force. And in this devlog I created two new characters, Hermes and Apollo. And I also made the ability system a lot more modular, so that you now can create custom ability loadouts for each character. But of course now I have to make more abilities for each character, so that this system is actually useful. Now if you're interested in this project, the best thing you can do to support it is to wishlist the game on Steam. I would definitely also really appreciate that, since that could potentially massively help the game when it launches. You are of course also welcome to join our Discord server, links are of course in the description. And if you're interested in getting access to the closed beta, and potentially also join future test sessions, feel free to message me and I'll probably give you access. Okay, let's jump right in. So first of all, I made the ability loadout system, so that in the future I can have more than 3 abilities per character, and then each player can customize their own ability loadout to a certain degree. For now I made it so that abilities are bound to a certain ability slot, basically just to have some control over what abilities can be comboed together, just to avoid super overpowered ability loadouts. I also had the idea to make abilities unlockable through leveling up, but for that I first need to create more abilities anyways. Because right now Hecate is the only one that has more than 3 abilities to choose from. So for the others I basically had to test with placeholder abilities. Also don't worry, one player can only equip 3 abilities at a given time. The system basically just gives the option to swap abilities. Okay, let's move on to Hermes. So just like with the other characters, I made the character in Character Creator and the clothing in Blender myself. And with Hermes' clothing I actually also tried out something new and I think it worked out quite well. And Hermes is actually also a lot better optimized than most of the older characters. I'll probably have to redo a lot of them. I then moved on to making his Caduceus in Blender, or however you pronounce that. And also started with his attack chain animation in Cascadeur, but for now, in-game he just uses Poseidon's attack animations as placeholders. For his abilities I chose a wind push that basically pushes his opponents away and knocks them on the ground, as well as some sort of dash attack, I guess you could call it. It's basically an attack that almost teleports him forward while also dealing damage. And as third ability I basically just chose a weapon throw for now. For the dash attack I still need to add sound effects and also fix the angle a bit, since right now he goes slightly to the side, which makes it really hard to hit opponents that are further away. And for the wind push ability I also want some visual effects. But generally speaking, for most of the abilities in the game I want more visual effects. It's just that I'm not really that good at making visual effects, I'm always finding excuses to do other things first. Now since I wanted Hermes to be fast and agile, I was first thinking of giving him more dashes or reduce his cooldown time on dashes, but instead I ended up letting him dash midair, which I think is even better. And honestly, I'm generally really happy how Hermes turned out. Despite him not being entirely finished yet, he was really fun to play in the playtests, and he's easily one of my favorite characters already. At some point I added pre-compiling for shaders, so the game now also has this classic pre-compiling shader screen on startup. And yes, I know it's really annoying, but trust me it's worth it, since otherwise the game often starts compiling shaders when it renders an object for the first time, meaning if you for instance use an ability for the first time, for instance spawning Poseidon's wave, if you then see this wave for the first time you'll get a huge lag spike, which is really annoying. And pre-compiling of shaders really gets rid of most of these lag spikes. I was finally also able to get rid of a lot of bugs and glitches that have been in the game for a long time, like for instance where you could block midair or where abilities got stuck on cooldown, which was also really annoying. I was also playing around a bit with machine learning. The goal with it was of course to make myself a bit familiar with it, so that I can potentially add good AI players to Olympian Knights in the future, but we are definitely not quite there yet. Around Christmas I was playing around a bit with weather and snow, and yes, I know snow doesn't really fit the game well, but I've always loved snow in video games, so why not? Maybe I'll add a weather and day-night system in the future. So just like with Hermes and the others, I made Apollo's character in Character Creator and his clothing and weapon in Blender. However, Apollo was actually a bit tricky and new for me because it's the first time I had to animate a weapon independently from the character, or not animate it separately but rig it separately from the character, and then basically attach it to the character rig. And I also had to find a way for Apollo to move freely while doing all the bow and arrow animations, and of course also take aiming into account. In the end I ended up animating the upper and lower body separately, even though I generally don't really like doing this. I didn't really find a better way to do it in this case. For the aiming I made bow animations for 5 different directions, upwards, forwards and down, and one in between on each direction. And this honestly turned out better than I expected. The lower body on the other hand didn't really turn out that well to begin with. Since the upper body basically controls the character direction, I think I'll have to adjust the lower body movement animations to make them fit. For the arrows I decided to use Raycast, also known as hit scan, but with multiple scans over time in order to simulate gravity and travel time. And for visuals, I basically just move the arrow on the parabola with a trail renderer. And honestly, I think this looks pretty epic. Now, hit detection of course happens on the server, however the problem with this is you'll often not get hits that you think should have registered due to networking delays. Now, to reduce this issue, I implemented lag compensation, and the way this works is when the client fires a shot, it also tells the server which was the last tick it received from the server, and the server stores a history of all player positions and can then go back to that tick and check where all players were located at that tick and do hit detection. This is, by the way, also what competitive shooters like Counter-Strike do. Now, on my first attempt of implementing this system, I used the client's average ping instead of ticks, which made it pretty inconsistent because ping also often is really inconsistent. And what of course made it even worse was that I forgot to take travel time into account, which of course led to a pretty weird hit detection in the first test. After the first basic test, I synchronized the animations with the shooting. In other words, you can no longer shoot like it's a fully automatic machine gun, and I also made it so that arrows can now be blocked, and I tried to make it so that it kinda looks like they get cut in half. And maybe in the future I'll do it so that you can actually deflect arrows back to the players who tried to shoot you, but I'll probably make it harder than just holding block. Another thing I'll probably add in the future is that if you hold the arrow longer, damage and arrow speed will increase. For that I'll probably also make a dynamic crosshair that kind of helps indicating that. Now, regarding the abilities for Apollo, I haven't really started working on anything, but I was thinking about some things like an extra strong arrow that maybe burns and goes through block, maybe even with aim assist, or something like an arrow rain. Another thing could be something like a blinding effect, considering he is the god of the sun. Although I kinda hate things like flashbangs, not gonna lie. Anyways, last but not least, I was thinking about something like a shielding ability, considering dashes is the only way Apollo has to protect himself against melee attacks, while the other characters can basically just block all his arrows. And generally, I'm not sure yet if he'll actually work out with the other characters, because I do want it to be fun to play as or play against him. And not like in a certain other game where shooting characters often kind of ruin the fun. In case that he doesn't really work out with the other characters, I'll probably separate game modes into shooting game modes and normal close range combat game modes. Okay, I think that was pretty much everything. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember to wishlist. And also a huge thank you to all my playtesters so far. This game definitely wouldn't be possible without you. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!